Hi everyone, welcome to a concept design video for the City of Words. This video is sponsored by subscribers to patreon.artlr.com, and all of the drawing and painting in it is shown 4 times actual speed. And in this video I'll be showing how I go about designing an environment. In this case it's going to be a city where people who live in it love books, so they've built their city to look like books or out of books. And the first thing I do is I create what are called thumbnails, which are small drawings of different ideas for what my finished drawing could be, or my larger drawing could be. In this case, I'm just thinking really basically about shapes and framing and distance and things like that. So I have this idea that there's going to be an archway made of books that you're looking through. I want to do things with bridges and railings and stairs, and of course buildings that have kind of the spine of books, and maybe the roofs on the buildings are books that are open or spread in some way. So you'll see that in these, I'm using Photoshop to do these, but you can do them in any digital art program or just on a piece of paper. I recommend using a pen or a pencil without an eraser when you first start doing them, just because you can get too caught up in trying to erase things, and it's not really what you're doing here. You're just coming up with ideas. You're trying to generate a lot of ideas. And even if you think you have a good idea early on, it's still better to take that idea and do 3 or 4 thumbnail drawings beyond that, because you never know where they could take you. Now, right now, I'm really liking my very first drawing, and you'll see me go back to that in just a minute and play with that idea some more. And you're going to think about scale, showing the same things, doors and windows, closer and farther away, things like that. I'm not doing a lot with different perspective here, but you are seeing me put like a horizon line in on a few of these, which is where the sky meets the ground, just to have that idea. So here you see I've copied my first one, and because I'm on the computer, I can make it smaller and build it out. I want more depth. I'm starting to get an idea I like, kind of framed in and with these walkways and different levels of a city. And if you're not sure how to draw elements of a city, like I said, in this case, I'm using elements of books, book spines and things like that. But you can easily just look at pictures of cities and kind of keep a sketchbook of little thumbnails of places you've been, things you've seen, types of windows and doors and bridges and things like that. So this is going to be the one that I'll use for my finished painting. This will be the concept for it. And you can see, I mean, even at 4 times speed, I don't spend that much time on it. So once I have one I like, I create a new, in the case of the digital painting, a new document, and I blow it up. And I actually make it lighter and get rid of my white background. I always get rid of white backgrounds right away because the white digitally on a screen is brighter than the white of paper. It'll throw off your eye for colors and things like that. But at this point, I'm just tracing over it. I actually have a new layer. And you may say, well, you could do that digitally. I can't do that on paper. You can totally do that on paper. You can either use a light box, you can use tracing paper, or just redraw things to kind of get the same idea. But you'll see that even though my thumbnail was a lot of basic shapes, I'm able to blow it up and start to revise it and really create the details. I'm doing a store with a sign. It's going to be a rare bookstore, I think. And I'm designing stairs, things like that. And again, if these are the elements you're not used to drawing because you're new to drawing, or you usually draw creatures or things like that, like in a lot of my other videos, it's not that hard to learn to draw the elements of an environment. You can get a lot of books on perspective, the kind of things that break down different elements of a city, stairs and 3-dimensional blocks and things like that are all you really need to know how to do, and then you're just adding different shapes to them. Now here you see me do a nice little cheat where I take the stair railing, and Photoshop has these awesome warp tools where you can just duplicate things. So again, on paper I would just redraw this or trace it over, but on the computer you could do a nice cheat of just adjusting the perspective in separate layers of elements you've created, which can be a fun way to create things that have to be the same. Though I think I have a bit more trouble with the stairs here, and I don't continue doing it that way. So as you've seen, my process is to basically start with a number of quick ideas And once I get one I really like, where things are positioned right, and in this case I knew I was going to be doing an 11 by 17 painting, and I knew it was going to be a tall painting versus a wide painting, but these are all things you can play around with. If you're not sure, you can do different shapes of thumbnails, things like that. So I really play with those ideas till I find something I like and has things in the right place, and then I blow it up and create a more finished drawing. And you'll see me turning my underlying layers on and off as I'm creating this drawing over it. That's a lot more detailed. And in my basic thumbnail, I didn't really show that these roofs were books. I knew they were going to be because I knew it was a city that looked like it was made of books and other things like that. So as long as you know kind of what you intend in an area, thumbnails are just for you. You don't need to worry about other people seeing them, things like that. And you can see here again, I'm just able to kind of adjust the perspective on things and move things around a little bit. And as they say with a lot of writing and art, you can't be afraid to kill your darlings, which means that there might be a part of your picture you really like, but if the perspective's not right or it doesn't really fit in, sometimes you just have to erase it and redraw it. And what you can't see here is that on my other computer screen I had about 10 photos up of library shelves full of old books and piles of old books and things like that. I mean, I obviously, I'm a book hoarder myself, so I have a lot of books to look at. But just to get ideas for the spines of books and what they look like, and I've done a lot of bookworm drawings that have them with piles of books, so at this point I've drawn a lot of books. I know kind of what the curves of the pages are like, and how there's a bit of a circle shape where the spine of the book is if it's open. But if you've never drawn whatever the elements of your city are made up of, brick, wood, those things, it does help to get photo reference to study them. And I use a very similar method when I'm designing creatures. My sketchbook is full of just quick little thumbnails of different poses for dragons, different parts of animals, different ways I can mix things together. And you should never be afraid to do things badly or messily. It's all about generating the ideas. You can erase them, redraw them, fix them up, make them look nice later. But if you get all caught up with that too early on, then you kind of block the ideas from coming out. I think at this point I've got a pretty good basic concept drawing. So if I were just doing a drawing, this is where I might just keep tightening up the drawing and adding shadows and things like that. But because I'm doing a painting and I'm doing it digitally, I just immediately switch over and start blocking in my colors. And I always start, especially with environments, with a lot of just really basic large areas of color. Whether it's digital or I'm working on watercolor or things like that, I always work kind of larger areas to smaller areas. Watercolor I have to be a bit more careful with, obviously, and kind of plan out my colors and test them out a little more first. On this piece, because it's digital again, I can completely change the colors of things. And I'm looking to sort of unify things in my design by having some of the roofs be the same sort of red brick colored books, things like that. And I'll probably adjust some of those as I move forward, but initially I'm just trying to create some of the color scheme and the depth of the piece. I know that the most detail and darkest colors are going to be on the arch of books that we're looking through. And then this sort of book staircase pile of houses that's in the foreground, that will also be a bit darker. And then as you go towards the background of your environment, you are going to have things become lighter. You often have a color temperature change where things become cooler colors. So if you live in Arizona or look up photos of Arizona where I live, it's a great place to see that the mountains in the distance look a lot bluer than the mountains closer to you or than anything closer to you. And so learning these techniques really helps when you are working on environments. And when I'm digitally painting, depending on software, like I said, I use Photoshop just because I've had it for a long time. I'm used to it. There's a lot of other similar programs. You can find all kinds of examples and tutorials for those by myself and other people. And I use a lot of custom brushes that I've made, or just really basic brushes. This is a pretty basic one I'm using just to put colors in. But when I get into the point of doing textures and things like that, I often use custom brushes I've made from parts of my real watercolor paintings to kind of get those same effects in there. And I do use an art tablet when I'm painting. That's a device that has a pen and it can tell how hard or soft I'm pressing. So it works like you're drawing with a real pencil or paintbrush, things like that. You pretty much have to have an art tablet. You do not need one with a display, in my opinion. I've never spent the money on one with a display. I just plug it into my computer, and it took me about 6 weeks to get really used to it in 1998 when I started using one where I was drawing kind of on a different surface than I was looking at. I was looking up but drawing kind of below that. But once you get used to it, it helps your posture. It's actually a better thing, I think, than using one with a display. So at this point, you'll see me zoom in, and you get to see me do some more of the detail on the painting. I just wanted to show you guys kind of, this is really all as far as I would take it for a concept. But for a finished painting, then I actually go in and start to add a lot more shadows and deepen colors. And really it's just the same process. I just work larger areas, getting all the basic stuff in there, and then start to work on the details. And if you are painting digitally, you should never be zoomed in past 100%. If you're finding you're not able to zoom in enough to get detail at that level, then you should have your painting be larger. And again, one of the great things about working digitally is that you can grab windows and move them around and cut them out instead of having to erase and redraw them or paint over them. And the way I paint digitally is a lot like the way I would paint with a non-transparent paint like acrylic. When you guys see me work with watercolor and other videos, I have to be a little more planned out because I can't move windows and doors and things as much. However, sometimes I do a combination of digital and watercolor where I do the entire concept digitally, and when I'm happy with it, I print it out and then trace it onto watercolor paper, because at that point I already know exactly where all my buildings are going to be and things like that, or where my creature is going to be, the expression. So it's a good way to be able to adjust things to exactly where they should be on the paper and what you want before you get into watercolor or detailed digital painting or a detailed drawing, whichever your medium is. And you'll see me just come in here and just deepen, add black to some of the doorways. I think I actually end up changing these doors and windows to not be a black. I think I make the doors wood and the windows have some glass in them eventually here. But you can see me play around with a lot of different ideas, which I think is, if you can afford to get the things to paint digitally to begin with, it's a great way to learn without being worried about wasting supplies. So here is the finished painting. And you can see I've done a lot of what I talked about as atmospheric perspective. I've really pushed things to be lighter and fainter in the distance and really brought the colors up sharp in the foreground. And that's it for our design video. If you guys have questions or want to request other videos or designs in the future, just comment and let me know. And as I said, this video is all sponsored by subscribers to my Patreon, and you'll see those credits next. Thank you.